Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, Egypt's highest civilian court has upheld a 7-year jail term for an Islamist politician and ex-presidential candidate convicted of falsifying official documents. Hazem Salah Abu Ismail, a hardline Salafist Islamist, was one of many political figures arrested by the military after freely elected Islamist President Mohamed Morsi was toppled in 2013 following mass protests against his rule. Abu Ismail was disqualified from the 2012 election when it emerged that his mother held U.S. citizenship. Now, the election committee said this meant he could not run. In April last year, a criminal court found him guilty of falsifying official documents related to his mother's nationality and sentenced him to 7 years in jail. The High Court refused his appeal, making the earlier verdicts final and unchallengeable. Egypt smashed trials of Brotherhood members and people accused of links to the group, as well as its crackdown on Islamist and liberal opposition figures, have drawn international criticism of its judiciary and its rights record. Now, at least 6 people have been shot and wounded in Guinea's capital during protests against the timing of elections and what opposition figures say is targeted violence against them. Protesters barricaded streets and burned tires overnight in the neighborhoods of the capital, and those are considered opposition strongholds. Security forces then moved in to clear the streets, firing tear gas as protesters threw stones. Several witnesses reported hearing gunfire, and a government statement that was released has said that 10 people were injured and had been admitted to hospitals, including 6 people with bullet wounds. 8 people were arrested during the protests, and relative calm has returned. A police vehicle was damaged, and 1 member of the security force was injured by stone-throwing demonstrators. And that was announced by Guinea's Electoral Commission last month, that a presidential election would be held on October the 11th, which is what triggered the protest to begin with. And that's a decision the opposition has said broke a July 2013 agreement to hold long-delayed local elections first. Now, Al-Shabaab has struck again. Just this morning, the militants attacked a government building housing 2 ministries in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, setting off 2 big blasts before gunmen stormed inside, killing at least 5 people. Part of the deceased was an African Union official and a government soldier. The other 3 were civilians. However, there were casualties on the part of the militants, as 2 Al-Shabaab gunmen who stormed inside of the building were killed in the process as well. This attack is the latest in a series of raids in Mogadishu by the group, which wants to topple the Western-backed government and impose its own strict version of Islamic law. Al-Shabaab's military operations spokesman Sheikh Abdi Aziz Abu confirmed the group was behind this attack. The African Union has been supporting Somali troops in a campaign against Al-Shabaab, and the government relies heavily on the African peacekeepers for security, guarding major buildings and installations. As the families of the victims of the Garissa attacks in Kenya bury their dead, the students and staff of the University of the Witwatersrand have held a solidarity march in their memory. Dressed in all black and holding white candles, they marched through the campus in Bramfontein silently. The theme of the march was hashtag Africa for Garissa and hashtag Future, and the organizers say they are taking a bold stand against the attack on what they describe as the future of the continent. Our South Africa correspondent Betty Dibia has more.
When terrorism makes a splash, the negative splatter goes really far. Fortunately, so is condemnation as well as support for attack victims. And here at the Wits University in Johannesburg, the students are gathered to march in support of the victims of the Garissa attack in Kenya, and they're saying a big no to a blatant attack on what they refer as the future of the continent. 147 futures similar to theirs were snuffed out in the Garissa attack. To Kenyans, their hearts reach out.
We're standing in solidarity with them, and we're showing their families that we support them and that we are there for them as fellow Africans.
I think the students are sensitive and are aware of what's happening outside their world of invites, and I think it's a very a noble move for them to stand with the people of Kenya.
And to Al-Shabaab, they say enough.
To Al-Shabaab, I say, as a Muslim student, this is not Islam. What you do does not represent Muslim people or Muslim people's action.
To Al-Shabaab who are hiding in Somalia, the government of Kenya will defeat you, Kenyan people will defeat you, the spirit of Kenyan people is strong and will defeat you, and the blood of innocent Kenyans who were killed by Al-Shabaab terrorists will forever unite us in the war against terrorism.
Joined in the march was the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Adam Habib, and top academics as well as rights activists.
This connectedness, this sense of solidarity and unity amongst Africans, I think is very, very important. I think that the issues of terrorism are issues for all countries to grapple with.
Francis Otieno's cousin, Eric Okwan, managed to escape the Garissa attack by a hair's breadth, but he describes his continued trauma.
The poor boy is really in pain, having lost so many friends, being terrified by the gunshots. So there is not much to celebrate as such, as the whole country is mourning.
A similar solidarity event was held last week at the University of Cape Town in the Western Cape in memory of the victims of the Garissa attack in Kenya. From Johannesburg, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
Well, South Africa might be standing up for Kenya, but it has its own share of challenges as well, especially that of xenophobia. Based on reports we're getting, foreign-owned shops in KwaMashu, which is in KwaZulu, were looted and torched on Sunday evening as locals attempted to drive out immigrants from other African states. Now, based on the fact that this attack was carried out by locals, the ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe says people must be educated on the issue of Afrophobia, which is how he refers to this case. Well, no matter what one might choose to call it, what is clear is that dozens of lives have been lost and thousands of people have been displaced. The Malawian government has now begun voluntary repatriation of citizens, and all this began when the reigning king of the Zulu nation said foreigners should leave the country. Similar statements were also said to have been made by President Jacob Zuma's son, Edward. Malawians who were targeted during these attacks are also said to have lost their passports in the process. We'll take a break now on Network Africa. When we come back, we'll be speaking to our South Africa correspondent, Betty Dibia, concerning the issue of xenophobia in South Africa. Please stay with us.